In this book, we are going to take a look at Chinese wrestling. Hi guys, my name is Joe, and welcome to Fighting Words, the martial arts library. On this channel, I review martial arts books, and I talk about other martial arts related subjects. The subject for this week's review is going to be Chinese Fast Wrestling for Fighting, published in 1997. The authors are Liang Xiaoyu and Tai Di Nyo. Concerning the authors, Master Liang has been a gold medalist in Chinese wrestling, and he practices a number of different styles, including Xingyi and Baguozhang, and he's published a number of books. Mr. No is also an internal stylist, and according to the back of the book, he has won gold medals in internal style competition. Now, this is one book where I would suggest reading the introduction. One thing that it notes is this theory of Chinese martial arts. It states that all Chinese martial arts teach strikes, locks, and wrestling. And it actually says that strikes are better than locks are better than wrestling is better than strikes. So it's sort of a rock, paper, scissors as far as the strategic theory of the use of those things. It will note that all Chinese martial arts include this breadth of techniques, although they're not always taught, and I think particularly in the 21st century we're sort of seeing that. I'll also note that as someone who is quite familiar with the history of Japanese martial arts, the history of Japanese martial arts that's included in this intro is sort of dubious, and I wouldn't suggest taking it at face value. Now, the particular form of wrestling shown in this book is Sanshao Kuaijiao, which is fast wrestling for freestyle fighting. And this is distinct from what we typically get with Sanshao, the jacketed form of Chinese wrestling that includes a few different substyles. This is distinct from that in that it sort of shoes grip fighting, so that's not really part of the equation here. And it also incorporates strikes. They also note that there's no ground fighting, although I don't really think that that's common with Cuijiao in general. The book goes on to say that Sanshao Kuaijiao includes both external and internal training. It actually spends a surprising amount of time talking about eye training to sort of perceive your opponent's movements and react quickly to that. It also talks about, things like bravery and cunning and their value. Then it starts discussing the external training. This is both with and without equipment. The portion without equipment includes some limbering exercises in order to develop flexibility in things like the spine and the shoulders and the legs. It includes solo wrestling moves, so not quite like a full-on solo form, but the practice of certain like leg sweeps or turning for throws. You can practice that by yourself. And also break falls are shown in this section. When we get to the equipment section, we see the use of, for instance, resistance bands, elastic bands, and using those to sort of help train throwing movements. We see the use of a wrist roller, so that's a bar with a string, and at the end of the string is a weight. So you're rolling your wrists in order to build up your forearm and grip strength. There's also the barbell, and this includes some basic barbell exercises. There are some exercises that appear to simulate some wrestling maneuvers. And then we get training with a sandbag, which is, again, a weighted bag, about like yay. And there's a lot of throwing it up and catching it, so building the speed in your grip, building the strength of your grip, because you got to grab it as it's going through the air, building your coordination. That's a really interesting use of that. So I like that. Maybe I'll figure out how to get one and incorporate that into my training. Following that, we get into this section on the throws themselves, and it's pretty extensive. It includes 21 holding the legs throws. And a lot of these are coming off of, like, catching somebody's kick and then turning it into a throw. There are 6 over the back throws, which are basically hip throws and shoulder throws. There are 6 holding the waist throws, and these can be something like a waist lock from behind. It could be from the front, grabbing behind the waist and pushing on the head. There are 17 leg hooking throws. So these would be things similar to what we would see in your traditional sweeping or reaping throws. And then there are 27 other throws, and this is sort of a smorgasbord. You get things like the fireman's carry, you get like a scissors takedown, something as simple as like, grabbing the back of the hair and twisting the head. That's included in this section as well. The techniques in this throwing section are very often shown as defenses against strikes, including punches. There aren't really any jacket grips that are being used for this. After that, there is a small section on groundwork. It's by guest author Alan Arsenault, and it's primarily on things like locks and chokes. So the purpose of this section is to sort of follow on, like, okay, once you get the throw, if you are not in this setting, you might want to incorporate some of this stuff. So it's not really part of the art, but it's being shown as an add-on. And part of me wonders if it is being used to sort of advertise one of my favorite books, which is Chin Na in Ground Fighting, which Mr. Arsenault had a hand in writing. At the end of the book, we get in appendices, actually a couple of them. This includes a list of the techniques with their names in the Chinese writing. It also includes a glossary, and at the end of the book is an index. As far as the prose go, I think that this is a very good introductory text. I like that it provides a variety of techniques that do not rely on a jacket. The good thing about that is that it has a lot of transferability, because there are many environments where you are engaged in jacketed wrestling that you can use techniques that don't rely on the jacket. And then you have other environments, like, if you happen to find an opportunity to use techniques like this in a self-defense scenario and the guy's wearing a t-shirt, you're not going to have that thick, collar or sleeve to grab onto like you would in a judo competition. As far as the cons go, I'd say the most notable one is sort of a fault of books like this, where during the demo section of the techniques, the demo dummy sort of like leaves their punch hanging out while the guy executing the technique sort of goes to town on him. That I do not think that is a realistic portrayal of how things will go down. I also have a minor gripe. I sort of praise the fact that you didn't need a jacket for these techniques. The downside of that is that there is no grip fighting, jacketed or otherwise. There's nothing concerning tie-ups. This is meant to be fast wrestling, but if your initial attempt fails, now you're in a clinch, and I really wish there was a little bit of input concerning that. Again, it seems that it might be beyond the scope of this book, but frankly, so is ground fighting, and they had a whole chapter on that, so I don't know why they couldn't have included a little bit on grip fighting or clinch work. So, recommendations. I think that if you are interested in stand-up grappling, if you are curious about using grappling against striking, like wrestling against striking, this provides some good information on that. I would say, particularly if you already have a background in some grappling art, you can sort of take what's in here, work what you're already familiar with, and see it being used in a different context. If you are interested in seeing how Chinese grappling is used, this is a pretty good book for that, from an academic standpoint. So those are the ones that immediately come to my mind. There may be some self-defense applications for some of this. Like I said, I appreciate the fact that it doesn't require a jacket. So, if you don't live in Vancouver in December, then you can use this stuff. So again, from a self-defense perspective, a lot of the techniques are shown against striking techniques. So I think that could be incorporated, although again, I would caution to maybe have someone who's throwing realistic punches as opposed to what they're doing in some of the demos here. Anyway, that's all I have for this week. Thank you for watching. If you would like to support the channel, please consider donating to my Ko-fi account. There's a link to that in the description. And thank you for following along, and I'll see you guys later.